Hello, hello, hello. All right. We're going to be getting into this in a second. Chapter 3. Who the fuck is responsible for this garbage? And we're going to hear what Alex Jones has to say about it.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
All right. It's time to get into it, everyone. Chapter 3. Who is responsible for this garbage? Alex Jones. There's probably no better expert in the world to address the origins of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Great Reset, than Patrick Wood, an economist by training, author, and lecturer who has studied the issue of globalization since the late 1970s. Wood first became interested in the question of powerful groups of elites when as a young financial analyst and writer, he noticed that upon his election in 1976, horrible President Jimmy Carter picked a number of his advisors from a group called the Trilateral Commission. You might have heard of that. Founded in 1973 by David Rockefeller and Mika Brzezinski's father, Brzezinski. Father covered MSNBC. I always says that there. In the 2016 propaganda book Technocracy Rising, Wood recounts the Carter-Brzezinski relationship. Oh, maybe it's not he didn't write something that is, propagandist. Let's see. James Earl Carter, the Georgia peanut farmer turned politician who promised, "I will never lie to you," was chosen to join the commission by Brzezinski in 1973. It was Brzezinski, in fact, who identified Carter first as presidential timber and subsequently educated him in economics, foreign policy, and the ins and outs of world politics. Upon Carter's election, his first appointment placed Brzezinski as assistant to the president for national security matters. More commonly, he was called the head of National Security Council because he only answered to the president. Some rightly said Brzezinski held the second most powerful position in America. Is it wrong to say that? I don't think so. That's certainly not a bad position in which to find yourself, second only in power to the President of the United States. Who wouldn't want that gig, especially if it came without the need to do any campaigning, right? But this didn't happen without decades of prior work, and it certainly began prior to the creation of the Trilateral Commission in 1973. Woods identifies the roots of this globalist movement as beginning with the French philosopher Auguste Comte, 1798 through 1857. Generally credited as being the father of modern sociology and considered the first philosopher of science. Wow, that's one good thing and one bad thing. In the it's not bad. In the intellectual ferment of the day, it's easy to understand how he came to believe that scientific knowledge was the only authentic knowledge. This quickly gave rise to what's called scientism. Wow, more isms. Professing that science alone is what can answer all questions. For those who came to identify as progressives, namely those who believe human society is evolving towards perfection, this religion of technocrats, dubbed technocracy by its creators, offered a useful path toward the achievement of their utopian dreams. As Wood explains, industrialization was enabled by science, technology, and invention. As knowledge increased, it was surmised that society must change along with it, or at least adapt to it. Progressives called for bigger government run by qualified managers with diminishing personal liberty and national sovereignty, but they simultaneously fought to reduce waste and increase efficiency in government. The emphasis on efficiency drove many progressives into technocracy since science appeared to be the only pathway to achieve it. Okay, so it can then be seen how this new technocracy might interact with other such ideologies, such as progressivism, socialism, fascism, and even capitalism. The scientists and engineers would then be in control of society, but without having to contend with the pesky problems of democracy and individuals' rights. When I speak of democracy, this is in parentheses. When I speak of democracy, my readers understand I'm not talking about a pure democracy, but our constitutional republic, a system of majority rule and minority rights, in which elected representatives are given authority to make decisions that they must defend at the next election if they wish to remain in office. I feel like the music got loud and it's on 1. I mean, it doesn't get any lower than 1. Whatever. Wood goes on to claim that many groups in history, such as the Nazis, the fascists, and communists, would adopt many of these principles but were unwilling to allow the growth of the scientific elite leadership class who would oversee the society. These groups may have been evil, but they understood a challenge to their authority when they saw it. Because of its open and democratic institutions, the West seemed to present the best opportunity for the creation of this scientific. I'm shutting this off. Why can't I just press the mute button? There we go. This scientific whatever, where was I? Scientific engineering elite or technocracy. The people simply had to be persuaded to accept this gentle tyranny, which would, of course, free them from all their worries. The colossal death toll of World War I, with more than 9 million dead, should have presented an enormous opportunity for the development of a technocratic state, but those brief dreams were dashed by the technological and social changes brought about by the war, which came to fruition with the Roaring Twenties. During the early part of the 20th century, the technocracy flame was further developed and kept alive by people like Frederick Taylor, an American mechanical engineer known best for his work, The Principles of Scientific Management, and Walter Rautenstrauch, a professor at Columbia University who needs no more further instruction. We all, of course, know Walter Rautenstrauch. Many of these ideas would be embraced by a group of intellectuals who broke away from Columbia to form what became known as the New School, led by 2 men. I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to. Thorstein Veblen and his young protege and probably boyfriend, Howard Scott. In 1921, Veblen released his grand masterpiece, a book titled Engineers and the Price System, in which he wrote, if the country's productive industry were completely organized as a systematic whole, and were then managed by competent technicians with an eye to maximize production of goods and services instead of, as now, being manhandled by ignorant businessmen with an eye single to maximum profits, the resulting output of goods and services would doubtless exceed the current output by several 100%. It was only the arrival of the stock market crash of 1929 and the Great Depression in the United States that an opportunity arose for the technocrats. As Wood recounts, Society was ripe for technocracy during the depths of the Great Depression. It certainly appeared that capitalism was dead. It wasn't. Joblessness, deflation, hunger, anger at politicians and capitalists, and other social stresses had people begging for an explanation as to what went wrong and what could be done to fix it. Technocracy Inc. had both. Capitalism had died a natural death, and a technocracy oriented society would save them. The engineers, scientists, and technicians who would operate this technocratic utopia — utopia is a strong word for such a weak man — would eliminate all waste and corruption. Waste and corruption. Waste and corruption. 100 years later, people would only have to work 20 hours per week and every person would have a job. Abundance would be everywhere. The moment of the technocrats had seemingly arrived. The carnage of millions dying in the World War was not enough, but surely the President of the United States, Frankie Rose, could be talked into such a scheme. Rosie did adopt some of their ideas, like suspending the gold standard, of course, confiscating the gold of private citizens, and nationalizing certain industries, but he didn't want to hand power over to the technocrats, as Woody explains. In any case, American democracy was found to be unwilling to entertain technocracy, as it was soundly repudiated for all these reasons. National sovereignty and the constitutional form of government were not dispensable. Nobody was willing to give up private property or the possibility of accumulating private wealth. What do you fucking think? The apparent similarities between Technocracy Inc. and Nazi fascism were abhorrent to most Americans. Yeah, technocracy and Nazi fascism are the same thing. The grandiose promises of technocracy were seen as so much free lunch, and toward the end of the Great Depression, everybody knew from experience that there was no such thing as free lunch, motherfucker. Anyway, according to Wood, the technocrats didn't get their way during the Great Depression or World War II. However, in the aftermath of the defeat of Nazi Germany, some of their best scientists and engineers came to America by way of the CIA program called Operation Paperclip, if you've never heard of it. Infiltrating our pharmaceutical, defense, and space industries, led most notably by former Nazi rocket scientist Werner von Braun, widely credited for heading the American program to put a man on the moon. Walt Disney. Oops, I forgot to say that name. I didn't know why I said that name. The technocrats didn't win the battle for the public opinion, but even the Nazi technocrats were able to find a home in American industry and government work. The monster of technocracy slumbered in the American nation, waiting for the opportunity to rise and seize power. So who do you think is responsible for this? Jimmy Carter? Let's hear about China. China looked like North Korea does today. They had no economic system, there was starvation, they had no industry, and it was a horrible, oppressive culture. However, it was a blank slate to do anything that Rockefeller, the Rockefeller, the Rockefeller crowd wanted done. Excuse me. When Mr. Brzezinski got a hold of Deng Xiaoping, Brzezinski did not teach China about free market economics or capitalism. No, because he was a scumbag. He taught them about technocracy. That's one reason the ascendance of China has been so dramatic. They've excelled at using that, exploiting it, using technocracy, exploiting it, expanding it, and exporting it into the world. China is the poster child for technocracy. They've perfected surveillance, artificial intelligence, the use of social credit scores to keep their citizens in line, and strong arming the population, forcing them to do whatever they want. If they don't comply willingly, they just start shooting them. That is basically the story of China and how it came to be where it is today. Doesn't that sound great? Listen to all these commies and socialists. This is what they want to happen. And they get, but then they one person gets shot after they commit massive amounts of crime and murder themselves, and they get shot by a cop, and they protest this and that. But this is what they want to happen. They want those same cops to be able to just come out and start shooting. So who's making sense here? No one. Now I'm mixing some of the book with just some thoughts, but that's just how things go. Let's see what else we can find in here. The early members of the Trilateral Commission told us repeatedly that they were not interested in political takeover. Liars. And yet, during the Carter administration, Carter and Mondale were members. Brzezinski was a member. And at one point, every cabinet member Carter had, except for one, was a member of the Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group. It looked like a clean sweep. Then, on the other hand, they say they're not interested in a political takeover. They just wanted to create a new international economic order. Oh, I didn't want a political takeover. I just want a new international takeover. Oh, that makes sense. But what we found out was that America represented the policy generating strongman of global economics. And anybody who could get their hands on the engine of economics would be able to control the entire planet. And that's exactly what they did as time went onwards from 1976. Now, this gets into some other stuff about Comey and Trump and stuff. So I'm gonna end this one there. That's the rough version of chapter 3, and I hope you enjoyed. Be back. If you have any ideas for things to read or look into, let me know. I have okay. Jackson.